A year ago, I discovered something I still struggle to believe. My left ovary had been removed quietly, cleanly, professionally, and the person who did it was my own husband, a surgeon. For 16 years, I thought marrying a doctor meant safety. I was wrong. I want to tell everything, not just for justice, but for every woman who was ever told, "Trust me," and then lost ownership of her own body. This is my story, the one it took me 5 years to fully understand. So let's start at the moment everything cracked. The day I decided, for the first time, not to do what my husband said. Follow my story to learn your own lessons. My name is Marilyn Cooper. I'm 44 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon. And for most of my adult life, I believed one simple thing. If you marry a doctor, you are safe. My husband, Andrew, is a minimally invasive surgeon and co-owner of a private surgical center on the West Side. When we got married 16 years ago, everyone told me I'd hit the jackpot. "You'll never have to worry about your health," my mom used to say. "He'll catch anything early." For a long time, I believed that. 1. The problem. Strange symptoms and a quiet unease. It started a little over a year ago with small things I could almost ignore. A cramp in my lower belly that wouldn't quite go away. Periods that came too close together, then not at all. Then with bleeding so heavy, I had to change clothes at work. I'd wake up soaked in sweat in the middle of January. My heart would pound in meetings for no reason. I started dropping weight even though my diet hadn't changed. I run supply chain operations for a regional grocery chain. I'm used to stress, to 3 a.m. Calls about trucks stuck in the snow, to spreadsheets and contingency plans. I'm not dramatic about my health. I track things. I write them down. At first, I treated it like another problem to manage. New vitamins, earlier bedtime, cut back on coffee. Then came the night I lay curled on the bathroom floor, holding my stomach like something inside was trying to claw its way out. "Andrew," I whispered when I could get enough air. "Something's wrong." He came in, sleepy, in his old college t-shirt, and knelt beside me. He smelled like his expensive soap and the sterile, faint scent of the ore that seemed permanently baked into his skin. "Hey, hey," he said, voice soft as he helped me sit up. "Breathe, Marilyn. Look at me." The pain eased in waves. I clung to his arm. "This isn't normal," I said. "It can't be." He put the back of his hand on my forehead like he was checking a patient. "You're 44, he said gently. "This is textbook perimenopause. Hormonal fluctuations, irregular bleeding, hot flashes. You're describing the brochure." He said it like a joke, but my chest tightened. "This doesn't feel like a brochure," I said. "It feels like something's breaking." He kissed my hairline. "Your body is shifting gears. That's all. We'll run labs to shut your brain up. In the meantime, I can get you started on a low-dose hormone regimen. It'll smooth everything out." He printed prescriptions on his own letterhead, the same logo I'd seen on his glossy brochures and website. He talked about evidence-based medicine, about not letting internet forums scare you. I was starting. He never once said, "Let's have someone else take a look." Over the next months, the pills changed, but the pattern stayed the same. I'd say, "The cramping is worse this week." He'd say, "Bodies don't read calendars. You're fine." I'd say, "I bled through my clothes in a Costco checkout line. That's not okay." He'd say, "You run hot. You always have. You're catastrophizing, Marilyn. That's the hormones talking." He'd say it with a smile, with a little eye roll, as if we were sharing the same joke about my overactive imagination. And because he was Andrew, the man who scrubbed in to save other people's lives, the man who had once held my hand falling asleep in his scrubs between calls, I tried to believe him. But there's only so many nights you can lie awake watching the ceiling fan while sweat soaks your pillow before a different voice starts to whisper. Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. The day everything cracked open, I was driving across town, heading over the Fremont Bridge between warehouse inspections. A sharp, white-hot bolt of pain shot across my pelvis so hard my vision blurred. I had to swerve into the shoulder and throw the car in park, my nails digging into the steering wheel. I sat there, hazard lights blinking, semis roaring past, and realized I wasn't afraid of the pain anymore. I was afraid of going home and being told it was in my head. My phone was on the passenger seat. My fingers moved before I could talk myself out of it. I didn't look up reviews. I didn't research for days like I usually do. I just typed OHSU Gynecology Portland and hit call on the first number that came up. Center for Women's Health. This is Alicia, a calm voice said. How can I help you? My name is Marilyn Cooper, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too bright, too thin. I need to see someone who isn't my husband. It was the first time in 16 years of marriage that I put my health in someone else's hands. 2. The tightening knot. A medical mystery. A week later, I was sitting on an exam table in a clean, light-filled room at the university hospital, paper gown tied at the back, hands clenched in my lap. The plaque on the wall read, Naomi Wells, MD, Obstetrics and Gynecology. Okay, Marilyn, Dr. Wells said as she rolled her stool over to the ultrasound machine. Let's take this one step at a time. We'll start with a pelvic ultrasound, then decide what else we need based on what we see. Sound good? End quote. She was in her late 30s, with her dark curls pulled into a bun and a tired kindness in her eyes. She had the kind of no-nonsense calm that made me feel both seen and slightly terrified. Sounds good, I said, lying back. She narrated softly as she worked. I'm looking at your uterus. Lining is a little thin for your age, consistent with low estrogen, but nothing alarming there. Right ovary. She adjusted the probe, eyes on the screen. Okay, there it is. Right ovary is small but present. I can see follicles. Now left side. Her forehead creased. She moved the probe again, tilted it, pressed harder. Is something wrong? I asked. Hang on, she murmured. I want to get a clear look. Sometimes things like to hide. She took measurements on the screen, saved images, then pulled back and set the probe down a little too gently. When she met my eyes, the easy clinic small talk was gone. Marilyn, she said slowly, I'm not seeing your left ovary. I tried to process the sentence. Not seeing? Like it's hiding? Or like it's not there? She said. I see scar tissue in the area where it should be. More than I would expect from, say, a little cyst removal. Has anyone ever told you that you had surgery on that side? A larger procedure? I shook my head. No. I had a laparoscopic cyst removal 5 years ago. My husband did it. He told me it was a simple cyst, in and out. They singlet. Was that through his private surgical center? She asked. Yes. Cooper West Surgical Center, I said automatically. Why? She swiveled to the computer and pulled up my records. I'd brought copies from Andrew's office, the clinical note that said laparoscopic cystectomy, left ovarian cyst, benign. Dr. Wells scrolled, her expression flattening. There is no documentation here of an oophorectomy, she said. A what? Removal of an ovary, she said. That's what these scars look like to me. But I want to be certain before I say anything definitive. I'm going to order an MRI. It will give us a better look at the anatomy and the extent of the scarring. Closed. Could you accidentally remove an ovary? I asked. Like, could someone do that and forget to mention it? Her eyes softened, but her answer was firm. No, you don't accidentally remove an ovary, Marilyn, and you certainly don't forget to document it. Not in 2020 anything. That would be a violation of medical standards and of the law. Hearing the word law in a gynecology clinic made my stomach lurch. The MRI happened the next day. The tech slid me into the loud, claustrophobic tube while I stared at the tiny mirror and tried not to think about the fact that I was checking whether an entire organ was missing. 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Wells's office, not the exam room. There was a small plant on her desk, a framed print of Mount Hood on the wall. Outside, Portland rain drummed against the window. Naomi, she'd told me to call her that on the phone, folded her hands. I've reviewed your MRI with radiology, she said. Your left ovary is completely absent. The imaging shows clear evidence of a prior left oophorectomy. The surgical bed is clean. The vessels are cauterized. This was done with skill, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I heard the words, but they felt like they were coming through water. But I never... My voice broke. I never agreed to that. I would remember, Naomi. I would remember someone taking a piece of me. I round. I believe you, she said immediately. And that's why this is extremely serious. She turned her screen toward me so I could see the cross-section of my own pelvis. On the right side, a small oval. On the left, only a faint white haze of scar. This isn't just a, whoops, we shaved off too much cyst, she said quietly. This is a complete removal. And your hormone levels, which we drew at your last visit, show that your estrogen has been in a post-menopausal range for years. That lines up almost exactly with the timeline of that surgery 5 years ago. My throat closed. So, Andrew. I couldn't make myself finish the sentence. Naomi took a breath. I can't tell you what someone was thinking, she said, but I can tell you that removing an organ without documented medical necessity and without informed consent crosses from malpractice into potential criminal conduct. The room tilted sideways. You're saying this could be a crime? I whispered. In Oregon, she said, choosing her words carefully, performing an irreversible sterilization procedure without informed consent can be prosecuted as felony assault, among other things. I'm a mandated reporter. I don't get to look the other way and hope there's a good explanation. Tears burned behind my eyes. He's my husband, I said. We share a mortgage and a dog and a Costco membership. We host Thanksgiving for his residence. I swallowed. He held my hand while I signed those forms. Naomi's voice softened, but her jaw stayed tight. You should have been given a choice, she said. You should have been told the risks, the alternatives, the consequences. That's your right, as a patient and as a woman. Nobody, not a doctor, not a husband, gets to unilaterally decide that for you. She opened a folder on her desk. The hospital is required to report this to the Oregon Medical Board and to state health authorities. That will likely trigger an investigation. You may also be contacted by law enforcement, if you choose. I can connect you with an attorney who specializes in medical harm. The word law enforcement carved a new channel into my fear. How? How do I even do this? I asked. How do I file a police report saying my husband took my ovary? You don't have to figure it out alone, Naomi said. We'll document everything. Imaging, lab work, your recollection of events. We'll do this by the book. For the first time in months, I felt something besides fear. I felt anger beginning to wake up. 3. Medical confirmation. The brutal science. Over the next week, my body became a case file. Naomi ordered a full endocrine panel. The results came back like a ledger of everything I'd been feeling. My estradiol level should have been around 100 for a cycling woman my age had hovered in the teens for years. FSH and LH were sky high, screaming that my brain had been begging my body to make hormones that weren't coming. My bone density scan showed early osteopenia in my spine. My LDL cholesterol was creeping up. My cortisol pattern was flattened, like I'd been living in a constant state of alarm. This is not perimenopause, Naomi said, standing by the light board with the bone scan. This is surgical menopause. Your labs, your imaging, they all line up with someone who has lost ovarian function abruptly. I stared at the grayscale images of my own spine. Tiny white flecks marked lower density. This is why your joints hurt, she said. Why you're not sleeping. Why you're having palpitations. Your body has been without normal estrogen support for 5 years. 5 years, I repeated. 5 years of being told I was dramatic, overreacting, hormonal. Naomi sat across from me. You said the laparoscopic surgery was 5 years ago? Yeah, I said. Late spring. I remember because I missed the end of quarter at work. She typed, pulled up records. The operative note from Cooper West says, left ovarian cystectomy, removal of 3 centimeters benign cyst. Ovary preserved. She looked up at me. That is not consistent with what we're seeing. At all. Could he have written it wrong? I asked, even as my stomach told me I was stretching. She held my gaze. You don't mix those up, Marilyn. If you accidentally removed an ovary, you would document it. You'd inform the patient. You'd notify your malpractice carrier. There are safety nets for exactly this reason. It's Andrew, I said. The sentence felt brittle. He's meticulous. His notes are always perfect. He prides himself on that. Naomi paused. Which makes it even more concerning that this note is sparse, she said. There are no intraoperative photos attached, which is unusual for laparoscopic cases these days. No pathology report for removed tissue. That's not standard. So what does that mean? I asked. It means, she said carefully, that someone either failed to document a major procedure or deliberately altered the record after the fact. She exhaled. I've referred your case to a colleague of mine, Dr. Harris Stone. He's a gynecologic surgeon and an expert witness in surgical standards. He'll review your imaging and the available records. His opinion will carry weight with the board and, if it comes to that, in court. Court, I repeated, tasting the word. She nodded. I know that sounds overwhelming, but what's happening to you is not a family issue. It is a matter of bodily autonomy and professional ethics. I left the appointment with a thick packet of lab results and a small white card with Laura Briggs' Medical Crimes Unit printed on it. The science had done its job. Now it was the law's turn. 4. The investigation. Chasing the paper trail. Detective Laura Briggs met me in a small interview room at the hospital a few days later. She was in her 50s, hair cut short, blazer neat but not expensive. She had the look of someone who'd spent a lot of time listening to people at their worst moments and still believed in doing the paperwork right. "Mrs. Cooper," she said, shaking my hand. "I'm Detective Briggs with the Multnomah County Medical Crimes Unit. You can call me Laura or Detective, your choice." "Detective is fine," I said. It gave me something to hang on to. She turned on a small digital recorder. "I'm going to record our conversation, with your permission," she said. "We're at the information gathering stage. You're not under investigation. You are, in fact, the person we're concerned about protecting." I nodded. She started with simple questions. My age, my job, how long I'd been married to Andrew. Then she moved into the medical pieces. "When was the first time you were under general anesthesia with your husband as the surgeon?" she asked. 5 years ago, I said. "The laparoscopic cyst removal. Any other pelvic surgeries? C-sections? Fibroid removals?" "No," I said. "I've never been pregnant. We were talking about trying around that time." "What exactly did Andrew tell you about that surgery?" she asked. I closed my eyes, remembering the pre-op area at his center. The way I'd been proud to be on the inside, getting the good care his patients bragged about. "He said there was a small cyst on my left ovary," I said. "He told me it was simple, that he would just scoop it out. He said he'd be there the whole time, that it was easier for him to do it at his center than at the hospital." He handed me the consent forms on a clipboard and said, "You don't have to read all that legal mumbo-jumbo. It's standard." My throat tightened. I signed where he pointed. "Did anyone else go over the consent form with you?" "A nurse? A second physician?" "I remember a nurse asking if I had questions," I said slowly. But Andrew was standing behind her. He said, "She's fine. We've talked about this at home. And I didn't want to be the difficult wife." Briggs jotted notes. "Do you remember anything about the recovery?" she asked. "Pain? Conversations? Follow-up?" "I remember nausea," I said, "and him telling me everything went perfectly. He told me later that pathology confirmed it was just a benign cyst. He never mentioned taking out the ovary. Ever." Her jaw tightened. "We've requested all records from Cooper West Surgical Center related to your case," she said. "What they've sent us so far is sparse. The operative note Dr. Wells showed you. Some vitals. No anesthesia record, which is odd. No intraoperative photos. No pathology report. Those are all required elements." "So they're hiding it?" I asked. "Let's say," she said carefully, "that the documentation is incomplete in a way that raises red flags. We can subpoena their full electronic records and audit logs. Those logs will show when notes were created or altered, and by whom." She slid a form across the table. "This is a medical release allowing us to access your records, including any internal emails about your case. I know it's a lot of legal boilerplate, but unlike the last time, I'm going to ask you to read it. Ask me questions." I laughed once, bitter and small. "That sounds fair." We spent an hour going through every line. For the first time in 5 years, I signed my name under a medical form knowing exactly what I was agreeing to. 2 weeks later, Detective Briggs called. "Marilyn, can you talk?" she asked. "I'm at home," I said, stepping onto the patio, overlooking our neatly kept backyard. "What's going on?" "We've received partial electronic records from Cooper West," she said. "There are some inconsistencies." "Inconsistencies," I repeated. "The original operative note for your surgery time-stamped 5 years ago documented a left oophorectomy," she said. "Complete removal of the ovary. About 6 months later, that note was modified. The wording was changed to cystectomy, ovary preserved. The person logged as making that change was Andrew Cooper. The patio railing dug into my palms. So he knew, I whispered. He knew exactly what he'd done, and then he rewrote reality. End quote. We can't speculate on his motives yet, she said. But from a legal standpoint, altering a medical record to conceal a non-consensual procedure is extremely serious. We're working with the district attorney's office. In the meantime, I'd like to arrange for you to access his office under our observation. His office at the center? I asked. Yes. There may be physical or digital records he hasn't turned over, she said. We'll obtain a limited warrant, allowing you to enter under the pretext of looking for insurance documents. If there's anything there that helps answer how this happened or why I want you to be the one to see it first. Something cold and clear settled over me. How soon? I asked. As soon as the judge signs off, she said. Marilyn, I know this is your husband. None of this is easy. If at any point you want to stop, you tell me. But if he did what the evidence suggests, you're not just his wife, you're his victim. The word victim landed like a stone. I didn't like it, but I also didn't argue. 5. The office search. The hidden family. The day I walked into Cooper West Surgical Center with a detective sitting in an unmarked car across the street, the lobby looked exactly as it always had: soft jazz, a water wall, curated art meant to look expensive but not intimidating. Hey Marilyn, the receptionist said, surprised. I thought you were out on medical leave. Just grabbing some insurance paperwork from Andrew's office, I said, forcing a smile. He's in surgery, right? Yeah, all morning, she said. You know the code. Of course I did. I'd helped him pick at our anniversary, with the numbers scrambled. His office smelled like coffee and the faint lemon cleaner his assistant used. Diplomas lined the wall. A framed photo of us at Cannon Beach sat on the shelf, our smiles wide, the wind tugging my hair sideways. I'd loved that picture once. Now it just looked like a crime scene photo before a crime. I went to the locked file cabinet in the corner. The key was in the ceramic mug, exactly where he always left it. Inside were insurance contracts, malpractice policies, vendor agreements. At the back of the top drawer, half hidden under folders, was a small black USB drive. A piece of masking tape on it read, Laparoscopy Teaching Clips, A. C. My heart thudded. It made sense that he'd have teaching materials. He did lectures. He ran workshops. Still, my hands shook as I slid the drive into his desktop tower and woke the screen. The drive opened to folders labeled with procedure names: hernia repair, cholecystectomy, lysis of adhesions. At the bottom was a folder labeled personal, do not share. I clicked before I could talk myself out of it. Inside were 3 video files, all time-stamped 5 years ago. The first one's name made my stomach drop. Lap, Ovary, Marilyn C. 520, MP4. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, the monitor too bright. I double-clicked. The video sprang to life, grainy footage from a laparoscope camera inside a body I realized, with a sick twist, was mine. Pink, glistening organs, the curve of a uterus, the shimmering surface of an ovary on the right, and on the left, an ovary with a small, translucent cyst. Andrew's voice came through the speakers, calm and clinical. Here we are looking at the left ovary, he narrated, as if teaching. You can see the cyst here. I watched his instruments move with the assurance I'd always found sexy when he talked about operating precise, economical. This is what I do better than anyone, he used to say, spinning a pen between his fingers at the dinner table. I solve problems through tiny holes. On screen, the cautery tool touched the tissue. Instead of peeling the cyst from the ovary, he clamped at the pedicle. This patient has completed her desired family, his voice said over the audio. So we're going to remove this ovary entirely to reduce future issues. Completed her desired family. I felt the words like a slap. He tightened the clamp, then used the cautery to cut through the stalk in one clean motion. The ovary, my ovary, went pale as the blood supply shut off, then sagged into a mesh bag he introduced through another port. He snipped, tied, cauterized. It was elegant, efficient, utterly deliberate. My mouth tasted like metal. By the time the video ended, I was shaking so hard I had to grip the arms of his chair. There was no emergency, no bleeding, no messy tear that could excuse what he'd done as an in-the-moment decision. He'd planned it, narrated it, turned it into a teaching clip. The second file was similar, a close-up angle. I couldn't watch it again. My cursor drifted, almost numb, to another folder on the USB, tucked below the videos. West Side Family. The icon was a picture of a little house. Inside were photos, hundreds of them. The first was of Andrew, standing in front of a townhouse I recognized vaguely from the West Side cedar siding, small fenced yard. He had his arms around a young woman with long blonde hair and a messy topknot. On his other arm, a little girl, maybe 4 years old, cheeks flushed from the cold, was clinging to his neck. The little girl had his eyes. In another photo, they were carving pumpkins together at a kitchen island I'd never seen. In another, the little girl, her hair in pigtails, now blew out 4 candles on a pink birthday cake while Andrew beamed in the background, hands on the shoulders of the woman next to him. A photo from Christmas, matching pajamas, stockings on the mantel with names in cursive. Andrew, Chloe, Lily. I clicked on an email export file in the same folder. It opened a chain of messages between Andrew Cooper and Chloe Benson, a Gmail address, a school district email signature. First they were about a knee surgery she'd had at his center. Then they became flirtatious, then intimate, then domestic. I scrolled until a subject line caught my eye. Ray. Marilyn and the baby thing. The email was 5 years old, dated 2 weeks before my surgery. From Andrew Cooper. 2. Chloe Benson. Babe, you keep worrying she's going to want kids and complicate everything. I told you I'm handling it. She's got this cyst that's a perfect excuse. I'll take the ovary. Clean, simple. No more surprise baby conversations. She'll chalk the symptoms up to getting older. You and Lily are my real family. This just removes one more obstacle. When I finished reading, I realized I'd dug my nails into my palm hard enough to break the skin. My real family. In a folder labeled Finance, there were bank statements showing monthly transfers to Chloe Benson marked Child Support, a $529 college savings plan with Lily's name on it, a lease for the townhouse Andrew and Chloe listed as co-tenants, an insurance policy naming Lily as a beneficiary. While I'd been clipping coupons and putting off vacations because Andrew said, starting a family is expensive and we need to be responsible, he'd been funding a second household 15 minutes across town. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. Marilyn? Detective Briggs's voice came through. We're in the parking lot. Anything? I swallowed hard. Detective, I said, you're going to want to see this. I found the surgery videos. And something else. I looked back at the screen at the laughing little girl with Andrew's eyes, at the woman pressed into his side like she belonged there. At this point, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me, I think we also have a motive. 6. Home search. The deeper motives. That evening, after the forensic techs imaged the USB and Detective Briggs logged everything as evidence, I went home to the house Andrew and I had shared for 14 years. The Craftsman in Northwest Portland had always felt like a dream when we bought it. Tree-lined street, front porch swing, enough room for the hypothetical kids we talked about someday. Now, walking in through the front door, it felt like a set. The kitchen counters gleamed. Our wedding photo smiled from the fridge. The dog bed in the corner was empty. Our lab mix, Scout, was at the neighbor's because I hadn't wanted him underfoot. I went straight to Andrew's home office. Unlike the one at the center, this computer was mine to sit at, no warrant needed. Half our utility bills ran through it. Netflix was logged in. There was nothing secret about it, or so I'd thought. The desktop looked ordinary. Work folders, tax documents, a subfolder labeled Lectures. Then my eyes landed on a folder at the bottom, its name almost bland in its vagueness. MISC. Personal. I clicked. Inside were more email archives, this time including copies of messages Andrew had sent from his official Cooper West account. Someone, him, had set up automatic forwarding to his personal mail, maybe as a backup. Maybe because he liked having all his threads in one place. I opened a thread between him and his accountant. From Andrew Cooper. Subject: reallocation of funds. We need to make sure transfers to the West Side townhouse don't raise flags. Label them as consulting fees or practice outreach. Marilyn watches the joint accounts, and I don't want her asking questions about why money is going out every month for rent when we own our house. Another chain, with Chloe. From Andrew Cooper. 2. Chloe Benson. Don't let Marilyn's texts freak you out. She's on this maybe it's time we tried for a baby kick again. It's just her clock talking. Once I finish what we talked about in the OR, her body will make the decision for her. Besides, I'm almost 50. I'm not starting diapers and daycare with the wrong woman. You and Lily are more than enough chaos for me. There were no emojis. No softness. Just a clinical cruelty that made my skin crawl. In another email, dated 6 months ago, he wrote, "Her hot flashes and moods are getting rough, but honestly, it's working in our favor. If she starts acting out, I have documentation of hormonal instability. Not hard to spin that if things get messy." If things get messy, I navigated to a folder titled Investments. Inside were spreadsheets tracking contributions to Lily's college fund, a savings account labeled Family West. I scrolled farther down and found a draft document titled Post-Marital Agreement, Cooper. When I opened it, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The document laid out a plan that read less like a legal draft and more like a blueprint. A proposed separation agreement in which Andrew kept the house, the surgical center shares, and the bulk of their savings. His justification column read, wife medically unable to have children, emotional volatility, inability to contribute to long-term family goals. Towards the bottom, in the draft notes, he'd written, wait until she's fully through the change. Psych makes great scapegoat. If she pushes back, I have chart notes documenting her paranoia. He'd written, paranoia, in quotes. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Then I plugged in a spare USB, highlighted everything, and copied. When the last progress bar disappeared, I called Detective Briggs. I've got more, I said when she picked up. Emails, financial records, draft legal documents. It's all pretty clear. Marilyn, you're not required to shoulder this alone, she said. We can send a team to collect the devices. I know, I said. But I need to see it myself. I need to know exactly what I'm fighting. She was quiet for a moment. All right, she said. I'm filing for a broader search warrant tonight. We'll have a digital forensics team out there first thing in the morning. Until then, don't delete or move anything. Just keep yourself safe. Quote, is he coming home tonight? I asked, surprising myself with the question. We served him with notice of the board investigation this afternoon at the center, she said. If I had to guess, he's rattled. He may come home to try to control the narrative. If he does, I want you to step back. We are very close to having enough to arrest him. I don't want you in the middle of a confrontation without us present. I looked around the office, Andrew's neatly stacked journals, his framed awards, the photo of us at some gala I barely remembered. I don't think I've ever really been out of the middle of it, I said softly. When we hung up, I sat there for a moment in the quiet humming of the house. Then I did something I hadn't done since we got married. I pulled my overnight bag from the closet and started packing his clothes, not because I planned to leave, because I planned to make it very clear that he no longer lived here. 7. The Confrontation. Unmasking Andrew. I was in the office when I heard the garage door open sooner than I'd expected. He must have left the center early. My heart lurched, but a strange calm settled over me. I closed out of the financial folder but left one window open on the screen. The laparoscopic video paused on the moment his cautery tool bit into the tissue of my ovary. I took the small external drive with all the copied files and slipped it into the pocket of my jeans. Then, from my purse, I took out a printed screenshot of his email about having handled the baby issue. The front door opened. His footsteps sounded down the hallway. Marilyn? His voice bounced lightly off the walls. Hey, I thought we were going to talk tonight. I brought dinner. A rustle of a paper bag. And your favorite wine, because clearly my little perimenopausal disaster needs pampering. I had heard that tone of faux affection 1,000 times. It made my skin crawl now. I'm in your office, I called. He walked in seconds later, still in his dress shirt and slacks, tie loosened. He had a bag from our favorite Thai place in one hand and a bottle of Pinot Noir in the other. There was a crease between his brows I recognized from when surgeries ran long. He stopped when he saw the monitor. For a heartbeat, he didn't move. His eyes flicked from the screen to me, to the paper in my hand. Marilyn, he said, voice suddenly careful. What are you doing on my computer? You labeled it, I said, nodding at the video. You even named the file. Lap, ovary, Marilyn C. He set the wine down a little too hard on the desk. Those are confidential teaching materials. He snapped. You can't just… I'm the patient, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too clear. I think I have some right to see what you did to my body. Okay. You need to slow down. He put his hands up, palms out, the way he did with agitated residents. Your hormones are all over the place. You shouldn't be digging through surgical videos without context. Context, I repeated. I picked up the mouse and hit play. The muted room filled with the sound of his voice from 5 years ago, clinical and assured. This patient has completed her desired family, so we're going to remove this ovary entirely to reduce future issues. We both watched him clamp, cut, cauterize. I paused it again on the still frame of my severed ovary in the mesh bag. You never asked me if I'd completed anything, I said. You never told me you were removing an organ. You said you were scooping out a cyst. You handed me a clipboard and told me not to worry about the details. He moved toward the computer, but I stepped in front of it, holding the screenshot of his email up between us. And then, I said, my voice shaking now, you wrote to your girlfriend that you were handling the baby thing so she wouldn't have to worry about me having kids. His face drained of color. For a second, I saw something like pure fear. Then the mask slid back into place. Marilyn, listen to yourself, he said. You're spiraling. That email is taken out of context. The surgery was medically indicated. The ovary was diseased, and I made a judgment call in the OR, which is my right as the surgeon. Then why did you change the operative note 6 months later? I snapped. Why does the original say oophorectomy and the edited version say cystectomy? Why is there no record of the tissue being sent to pathology? Why do my hormone levels look like someone cut off my estrogen supply 5 years ago? Why, Andrew? His jaw clenched. You have no idea what you're talking about, he said through his teeth. You're not a doctor. You're reading a handful of lab values and spinning conspiracy theories because your body is aging and you can't handle it. All right, I said. Let's talk about what I can handle. I stepped closer, holding his gaze. I can handle the fact that you were sleeping with a 20-something elementary school teacher while telling me we couldn't afford kids. I can handle that you've been paying rent on a townhouse labeled Practice Outreach while I was clipping coupons. I can even handle that you love her daughter more than the idea of any child we might have had. He flinched. You dug through my finances? He demanded. That's a violation of my privacy. I know. You violated my body, I said, my voice rising for the first time. You cut out my ovary and my chance to ever carry a child, so you could have a clean conscience while you played house on the west side with your real family. Something in his expression changed, fear giving way to anger. You're being hysterical, he said. Do you hear yourself? This is exactly what I've been documenting. The mood swings, the paranoia. If you keep this up, Marilyn, I'm going to have to insist you see someone, a psychiatrist. We can't have you destroying our lives because you read a few charts wrong. Our lives. Behind the anger in his eyes, I saw calculation, his brain already drafting the narrative where he was the devoted husband of an unstable woman. I was done letting him write the story. Well, that's the thing, I said quietly. They're not just our lives anymore. Before he could ask what I meant, a firm knock sounded on the front door, followed by it opening. Andrew Cooper? A voice called. Portland Police, Medical Crimes Unit. Detective Briggs stepped into the office doorway, her badge clipped to her belt, 2 uniformed officers behind her. Andrew whirled around. What the hell is this? He demanded. You can't just barge into my home, Mr. Cooper, Detective Briggs said, her tone flat and official. You are under arrest on probable cause for first-degree assault, unauthorized sterilization, and tampering with medical records. The room shrank to the size of his shocked face. You're kidding me, he said, laughing once, a high, disbelieving sound. On what basis? Because my wife is having a midlife crisis and found some videos she doesn't understand? Briggs held up a folded document. On the basis of imaging, lab results, the original and altered operative notes from your surgical center, the laparoscopic footage you helpfully labeled with your wife's name, and extensive correspondence indicating motive, she said. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the officer stepped forward with handcuffs, another voice rang out from the hallway. Andrew? A woman appeared in the doorway, breathless, clutching a set of car keys. She had on a cardigan and leggings, hair in a messy bun. She looked younger than me, but not as young as in the early photos. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying all the way over. "Chloe," Andrew said, panic flaring. "You can't be here." She looked from the badges to the handcuffs, to the frozen image on the monitor. What did you do?" she whispered. Detective Briggs glanced at her. "Miss Benson?" she asked. "I'm Detective Briggs. We're going to need a statement from you as well." Chloe's gaze snapped to me. "You're Marilyn," she said. "I've seen your picture," he said. "He said you were sick, that you couldn't have kids, that you'd known for years you were infertile." My hands were shaking, but my voice came out steady. "He made sure of that," I said. "Without asking me." Chloe's face crumpled. "You told me." She turned on Andrew, voice rising. "You told me she was born that way, that she didn't even want children, that you were trapped in some dead marriage with a woman who hated your work and your hours and your dreams. You never said you," she choked on the words. "You never said you cut out pieces of her." "Chloe, babe, listen to me," Andrew said, struggling as the officer pulled his hands behind his back. "They're twisting this. Marilyn is unstable. She's been seeing things, hearing things. We needed to manage her hormones." "Her hormones?" I repeated. "That's what you're going with?" Chloe looked like someone had knocked the breath out of her. "We have a child together," she said, voice breaking. "Lily is upstairs at my neighbor's watching cartoons because I didn't know what else to do. What am I supposed to tell her? That her dad goes around cutting women open and lying about it?" Andrew's eyes darted between us, frantic. "I did what had to be done," he snapped. "Marilyn was never going to be a mother. She didn't have the emotional capacity. It would have been cruel to saddle a kid with her." "The only cruelty here," I said, "is that you thought you were entitled to decide that." Detective Briggs stepped closer. "Mr. Cooper," she said, "I strongly advise you to stop talking. Anything further will make this worse." He stared at me, something like hatred and something like pleading tangling in his expression. "Marilyn, we can fix this," he said desperately. "I'll get the best lawyers, the best endocrinologists. We'll say it was a complex case, that you misunderstood the consent. Don't do this. Don't blow up our lives over one decision I made in your best interest." "You didn't just take my ovary, Andrew," I said. "You took my choice, my future, and you tried to rewrite the story so I would blame my own body instead of you. That was not in my best interest." They let him pass me down the hall. His shoulder brushed mine as he went by. For a second, I smelled his cologne, the same one he'd worn on our first date, our wedding day, every anniversary. It smelled like every good memory I'd ever had. And now, like a crime scene. In the doorway, Chloe lingered, tears streaking her face. "I swear I didn't know," she said to me, voice hoarse. I thought I was the one he was rescuing, not the reason he was hurting someone else. I believed her. Not because I needed to, but because I could see the same look I'd seen in my own mirror for months, someone realizing the person she trusted was not who she thought. "How old is your daughter?" I asked quietly. 4, she said. "Lily. She thinks her daddy works a lot because he saves people. I don't know how I'm supposed to tell her that." Her voice crumbled. "You'll tell her the truth," I said. "In pieces, as she can handle it. And you'll make sure she knows that what he did is not how love looks." Detective Briggs touched Chloe's arm gently. "Miss Benson, I'll need you to come down to the station later tonight to give a formal statement," she said. "Right now, why don't you go be with your daughter?" Chloe nodded, backing away. "Marilyn," she said, stopping. "I don't deserve it, but I'm sorry. I didn't say, 'I forgive you.' That would have been a lie. But I didn't say, 'I hate you,' either." I just nodded. One betrayal at a time was enough for one day. 8. The trial, justice, piece by piece. The Multnomah County Courthouse is an old building that smells like dust and coffee. By the time Andrew's case went to trial, almost a year had passed. In that time, the Oregon Medical Board had suspended his license. The surgical center had severed ties and rebranded under a different name. Our house had been refinanced, under my name alone, part of a settlement worked out by lawyers who spent months arguing over percentages while my body slowly adjusted to carefully managed hormone replacement. The courtroom was packed on the first day. Reporters sat cheek by jowl with curious strangers. A handful of women from Naomi's clinic sat in the gallery, nurses and patients who'd heard about the case and come to support me. I recognized some of Andrew's former colleagues, their faces stiff with professional discomfort. He sat at the defense table in a gray suit, thinner than I remembered, his hair threaded with more gray. His hands were folded neatly, the way he always did when he wanted to look composed. Only the twitch in his jaw gave him away. Judge Helen Morales presided, sharp-eyed, mid-50s, known in the local news for being tough on domestic violence and white-collar crime alike. The prosecutor, a woman named Karen Shaw, laid out the state's case in a calm, relentless opening statement. "This case is not about a bad outcome," she told the jury. "It is not about a complicated surgery or a simple miscommunication. It is about a doctor who used his medical knowledge not to heal, but to control. A husband who removed an organ from his wife without her consent, lied about it, altered medical records to cover it up, and used the resulting suffering to paint her as unstable while he built a second life with another woman and their child." Andrew's lawyer, a polished man in an expensive tie, countered that Andrew had faced a complex clinical scenario, that he had made split-second decisions in the OR, and that the state was trying to criminalize medicine using the emotional weight of a marital conflict. Then the witnesses began. Naomi was first. She wore a simple navy dress and her white coat, her ID badge clipped as always to her lapel. She explained the imaging, the lab results, the scarring. "In your expert opinion, Dr. Wells," the prosecutor asked, "does anything you saw in the records or the imaging suggest that removal of the ovary was medically unavoidable?" "No," Naomi said, voice steady. "There is nothing in the operative note, as originally written or as altered, that documents a complication necessitating removal. The imaging suggests a small cyst. In that scenario, standard of care would be cystectomy, removing the cyst, not the whole ovary." "And would a reasonable patient expect to be told explicitly if an ovary was going to be removed?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes," Naomi said. "It's not minor. It has lifelong hormonal and reproductive consequences. It requires separate discussion and consent." Dr. Harris Stone testified next, walking the jury through the laparoscopic footage frame by frame. In the courtroom, my stomach knotted as my ovary, no longer mine, once again appeared on the big screen. "Is there anything about Dr. Cooper's actions here that suggests an accident?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Harris said. "The pedicle is isolated. He verbalizes his intent to remove the ovary. He applies energy and cuts in a controlled fashion. This is a deliberate oophorectomy performed by a skilled surgeon. The only issue here is not his technique, which is excellent, but the ethics of doing it without documented consent." The defense tried to suggest that Andrew's narration was generic teaching language, that he'd used a template and not updated it. Harris shut that down with a raised eyebrow. "I've been in practice for 25 years, he said. "We do not template taking out organs." Digital forensic experts testified about the altered operative note, the timestamps showing the change, the IP address tying it to Andrew's office computer. Another expert walked the jury through the email chains, the financial transfers, the drafted postmarital agreement. Then Chloe took the stand. I watched her walk to the witness chair in a simple blouse and slacks, her hair pulled back. She looked older than when I'd first seen her, some of the softness burned away. "Miss Benson," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the jury how you met the defendant?" "I was his patient," she said. "I tore my ACL playing pickup soccer and had surgery at his center. He was charming and attentive. He called to check on me himself. He told me his marriage was over in everything but name, that his wife hated kids, that she was cold, that they slept in separate rooms. I believed him." 8. She described how their relationship had turned romantic, how Lily had been conceived, how Andrew had been with her in the delivery room. "He told me he couldn't leave Marilyn right away because she was delicate," Chloe said, tears standing in her eyes. "He said she was mentally fragile, that she might hurt herself if he blindsided her. He said she'd never been able to have kids, that there was some genetic thing. That made me feel less guilty about having Lily." The prosecutor handed her a printed email. "Do you recognize this?" she asked. "Yes," Chloe said. "It's from Andrew. He sent it to me weeks before Marilyn's surgery. I found." She read it aloud, the part about handling my baby issue, about me chalking symptoms up to getting older, about Chloe and Lily being his real family. What did you think he meant when you read that? The prosecutor asked. I thought he meant he was finally going to be honest with her, Chloe said, that he was going to tell her he didn't want kids with her and ask for a divorce. I did not think. Her voice wavered. I didn't think he meant he was going to cut out parts of her without telling her. The defense tried to paint Chloe as a jilted lover, bitter and motivated to lie. She held steady. I wish I was lying, she said quietly at one point. Then maybe this would hurt less. It was. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand in a black dress I'd bought at Target. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. My palms were slick against the rail as I raised my right hand and swore to tell the truth. Mrs. Cooper, the prosecutor said, can you tell the jury how you felt when you learned your ovary was missing? I looked at the 12 faces in the box, men and women. Some middle-aged, some young, one older man with a hearing aid leaning forward like he didn't want to miss a word. I felt crazy, I said, like the world had flipped and I was the only one who realized we were upside down. I had spent 5 years being told my pain, my bleeding, my hot flashes were normal, that I was overreacting, that I was reading too much online. When Dr. Wells showed me the imaging, I thought, how could I not know? How could I not have been told? And then I thought, who benefits from me not knowing? I described the night on the bathroom floor, the day on the bridge, the first appointment with Naomi. I spoke about Andrew's reassurances, his prescriptions, his jokes about my perimenopausal brain. We'd talked about kids, I said. Not constantly, but enough. We had a bedroom picked out that we called the someday room. We had names we liked. I blamed myself for years, thinking I'd waited too long. That my body had betrayed me. Turns out it wasn't my body that betrayed me. The defense attorney asked his questions, trying to prod at any inconsistency. Is it possible, he asked at one point, that Dr. Cooper discussed the possibility of removing the ovary and you simply don't remember? If my husband had told me he wanted to take out my ovary, I would remember, I said. If a mechanic tells you they changed your oil instead of your engine, you remember. This is not a detail you mishear. He asked whether I might have had unconscious hostility about Andrew's demanding job, whether I resented his income, his ego, his late nights. I resented him not doing the dishes sometimes, I said. A ripple of quiet laughter ran through the courtroom. I did not resent him enough to fabricate surgical footage, altered notes, and emails he wrote with his own hands. In closing arguments, the prosecutor didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Consent does not end when you sign a marriage license, she told the jury. Being a husband does not give you the right to carve up your wife's body to make your life more convenient. Being a doctor does not put you above the law. Every woman in this room has lived with the fear that her concerns will be dismissed as hormones. In this case, that fear was weaponized to mask a felony. The defense tried to salvage something: stress, burnout, a man pushed too far by the demands of surgery and marriage. He made a mistake, the lawyer said. A terrible one, but a mistake. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they filed back in, my hands shook so badly I had to lace my fingers together. Madam Foreperson, Judge Morales said, has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor, the woman in the front row said. In the matter of the state of Oregon, v. Andrew Cooper, on the charge of assault in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of unauthorized sterilization, how do you find? Guilty. Okay. On the charge of tampering with public records, how do you find? Guilty. Andrew didn't look at me. His shoulders sagged as if someone had taken a scalpel to the string holding him upright. At sentencing a month later, the courtroom was less crowded. The spectacle was over. What remained was numbers and years and restitution. Judge Morales looked at Andrew over the rim of her glasses. Mr. Cooper, she said, you took vows as a physician and as a husband. You violated both in ways this court finds egregious. You used your medical skill to commit violence against someone who trusted you. You then attempted to cover it up, to gaslight her, to profit from the harm you caused. And she sentenced him to 7 years in state prison, the maximum under the plea-adjusted guidelines for the combination of charges, followed by 3 years of post-prison supervision. She ordered permanent revocation of his medical license. She ordered him to pay significant financial damages to me for pain and suffering, lost reproductive capacity, and lifelong medical monitoring. When it was my turn to speak at sentencing, I walked to the podium with a single sheet of paper. I didn't read from it. "I can't get my ovary back," I said. "I can't get back the years I spent thinking I was just weak or dramatic or too busy to be a mother. What I can get back is my voice. My ability to say, this happened, and have people believe me. I am not asking for vengeance. I am asking for a clear message that no one, no matter how many letters they have after their name, can take a woman's bodily autonomy and call it love." I looked at Andrew for the first time since the verdict. He finally looked back. There was no apology in his eyes. No understanding. Just a hollow outrage, like the world had betrayed him by enforcing rules he thought he was above. I turned away. Some losses are permanent. So are some freedoms. 9. Aftermath. Rebuilding and reclaiming my body. A year later, I wake up in a different house. It's a small rented place on the edge of Forest Park, nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with creaky floors, a little deck out back, and enough trees that when the wind blows, I can pretend I live in the woods. The someday room here is not waiting for a hypothetical baby from my body. It's painted a bright blue, covered in dinosaur posters and piles of library books. There's a lava lamp on the dresser and a hand-lettered sign taped to the wall that reads, "This room belongs to Jaden." Jaden is 8. He came into my life through the Oregon foster care system. His mom died after a complicated abdominal surgery at another hospital in another city. His dad was never in the picture. He has a scar that runs from his sternum to his belly button and a lot of questions about why adults leave. The first time I met him, he sat across from me in a social worker's office, swinging his legs. "You look normal," he said, like he was mildly disappointed. "I get that a lot," I said. He grinned, then sobered. "Do you, send kids back?" "No," I said. "I return library books. I return shopping carts. I don't return kids." Now, on a Tuesday morning, I knock on his door. "Hey, kiddo," I call. "You're going to miss the bus if you keep arguing with your socks." He emerges, hair sticking up, t-shirt backward, socks mismatched. "I like them like this," he says, wiggling his toes. "They're a vibe." "Your vibe can't be tardy again," I say, ruffling his hair. "Eat your cereal." At the kitchen table, he digs into a bowl of Cheerios while talking around mouthfuls about the dinosaur unit they're starting at school. "Miss Clark says some dinosaurs had feathers," he says, scandalized. "That's fake. That's science," I say. "Sometimes it's weirder than movies." "You're weirder than movies," he says, then pauses. "In a good way." I kiss the top of his head. "Flattery will get you exactly 1 extra fruit snack in your lunch." After he's on the bus, I drive up the hill to OHSU. The route is muscle memory by now, curves up the hill. That view of the city that still steals my breath when the clouds cooperate. In the gynecologic oncology waiting room, where I've now spent more hours than I want to count, not for cancer, but for the kind of long-term monitoring you get after 5 years of unregulated hormonal chaos, I sit in a chair by the window and fill out yet another symptom questionnaire. When Harris comes out to get me, he's in scrubs. His hair slightly mussed, like he's been in the OR. "Marilyn," he says, smiling. "Come on back." In the exam room, he reviews my chart on the tablet. "Bone density's holding steady," he says. "Cholesterol looks good. Your estradiol level is right where we want it on your current HRT dose. How are you feeling?" "Strong," I say. "Tired sometimes, but that might be more 8-year-old than endocrine." He chuckles. "Fair." He looks up from the tablet, expression more serious. "I know we've talked about this before," he says, "but I want to circle back, given you're a year out from the trial. There are some options we could consider: adjusting your hormones, maybe even exploring egg donation and gestational carriers if being a parent in that way is something you still want." He pauses. "But I don't want to assume. That's why I'm asking." End quote. There it is, the question that, for 16 years, nobody had genuinely put on the table for me to answer without an agenda. "Marilyn, do you want this?" he asks. The past year flashes through my mind not as a montage of trauma, but as moments of choice. Signing a lease in my own name. Choosing a bright blue paint color because Jaden said it reminded him of a video game sky. Sitting in a support group for women who'd been harmed by partners, saying, "My name is Marilyn, and my husband cut out my ovary. and having 12 heads nod like I'd said something ordinary. Standing outside the prison the day Andrew was transferred, not to gloat, but to watch the van pull away and feel, deep in my bones, that his choices no longer defined the boundaries of my life. I think about Jaden asking, "Are you my forever?" And me saying, as much as the state of Oregon and my fingerprints on a stack of papers can make it, yes. I think about how my body still wakes sometimes at 3 a.m., with a phantom hot flash, and how I put a hand on my chest and remind myself, "You're okay. You're safe. You're in charge now." I look at Harris. "I want to be a parent." I say, "I am one." Not how I thought, but it's real. And I'm happy. I exhale. As for pregnancy, I don't think I want to put my body through that. Not now. Not after everything. Maybe if things had been different before. But the idea of more people in white coats making decisions about my insides makes me want to run screaming. He nods. "Then we don't do that," he says simply. "We stick with what's keeping you healthy and feeling like yourself. And if you ever change your mind, we revisit. You call the shots." Something loosens in my chest. "Thank you," I say. "For asking. For not assuming. Bare minimum," he says. Then his mouth quirks. "Also, I've got a new hiking trail to show you in Forest Park if you and Jaden are up for it this weekend. Strictly as your physician, of course. Exercise is good for bone density." I laugh. "Is that your medical opinion?" "Absolutely," he says. "Doctor's orders." As I walk out of the hospital, the south waterfront spread out below, the Willamette slicing through the city. I think about the women who sit in waiting rooms like this every day, wondering if their pain will be believed, if their questions will be dismissed as hormonal, if their bodies are truly theirs. If I could, I would sit next to every one of them and say, "You are not crazy for wanting answers. You are not difficult for asking to see the chart, for wanting a second opinion, for saying, 'No, that doesn't feel right.' No diploma, no wedding band, no white coat overrides your right to know what is being done to your body and why." Andrew thought being a surgeon and a husband gave him the right to decide my future in secret. He was wrong. He lost his license, his freedom, and his carefully curated reputation. I lost an ovary and the possibility of ever seeing a plus sign on a pregnancy test with my own DNA. But I gained something he never understood the value of. An unshakable understanding that my body is mine. My story is mine. My choices are mine. At my support group, when it's my turn to share, I always end the same way. "If there's one thing I want you to take from what happened to me," I tell the circle of women, "it's this. No one gets to edit your consent after the fact, not with a pen, not with a scalpel, not with 'I was stressed' or 'I thought it was for the best.' If your gut says something is wrong, listen, ask, walk away, call a different doctor, call a detective if you have to. You are not overreacting, you are protecting yourself." Sometimes they nod, sometimes they cry, sometimes they just stare at the floor and squeeze my hand after. On the drive home, I roll down the window and let the damp Oregon air wash over me. When I pull into the driveway, Jaden is on the porch, swinging his legs and holding a piece of paper. "Look," he says as I climb the steps, "I got a gold star in science. I'm basically a genius." I take the paper, ruffle his hair. "I never doubted it for a second, honey," I say. He leans into me for a second longer than usual. "Are we still doing movie night?" he asks. "Yep," I say. "You, me, dinosaurs with feathers. It's a vibe." He laughs and runs inside. I stand there for one more breath, looking at the little house, the toys in the yard, the messy reality of a life that is not what I planned but is fully, completely mine. No surgeon decided that. I did?